Welcome to Season 3, Episode 10 of Angela Watson's Truth for Teachers. I'm your host, Angela Watson, and I'm here to speak life, encouragement, and truth into the minds and hearts of educators and get you energized for the week ahead. Today, I'm going to share some thoughts on how to create more class time for instruction. Visit truthforteachers.com to get the transcript, links to recommended resources, and to share your thoughts on the show. So every teacher needs more class time, right? Every year it seems like there's more and more content that needs to be covered and less time to teach it in. Excessive testing and all the other distractions really just suck away the time that we have for instructing students. Sometimes it feels like we test them, but we don't even have enough time to teach them, right? Fortunately, there are some easy ways that you can create more time for teaching. There are lots of things happening in our classrooms that either waste time or just make lessons take longer than they need to. If you struggle with lesson planning because you just don't have time to teach everything you're supposed to, these easy tips and productivity hacks will help you maximize every moment with students. I'm going to run through 10 ideas for eliminating class time wasters. And I'll go through them pretty quickly. Then in the blog post for the episode, I'll include the transcript with links to where you can read more or get resources for particular ideas. So you'll just go to thecornerstoneforteachers.com/S3EP10. That's for Season 3, EP10. So the first tip is to look for unnecessary tasks that you give kids simply because they're traditional. For example, we all know that kids memorize words for a spelling test, but that learning rarely transfers over to their actual writing. If you're not required to give spelling tests, ask yourself whether there's a better use for the 10 to 20 minutes of class time that you use for that each week. Cut out any daily routine that wastes time. Do you spend 5 minutes of class time every day taking attendance? And then 10 minutes having kids copy their homework assignments? Or 20 minutes to have students pack up and prepare for dismissal? That's 35 minutes a day that could probably be condensed down into about 10 or less. In the blog post for this episode, I linked to some tips for arrival and dismissal routines for ideas on how you can streamline all of these kinds of systems. I'm also going to link to ways that you can spend less time on bathroom and water fountain trips. You have to have really strong procedures for that, especially at the elementary level. Many elementary teachers sacrifice 10 to 20 minutes of instructional time every single day to allow students to take bathroom and water fountain breaks. And of course, they really aren't a break for students at all because they have to stand still and be quiet in the hallway. So try to streamline those procedures for bathroom and water fountain breaks as much as possible. And then use a free site like Go Noodle to give kids an actual break and a chance to move around. You also want to minimize class time that is spent coloring and illustrating. Now, there's nothing wrong with allowing kids to color code their notes and draw graphic organizers or decorate projects and so on. It just takes up a tremendous amount of class time, especially for artistic students and kids who are very perfectionistic. So teach students to write first and then draw afterwards if they have time. Give students explicit permission to turn in illustrations that aren't quote-unquote perfect, and emphasize that students are not being graded on their drawing abilities. Model for them how to draw illustrations quickly. Demonstrate how it's not necessary to spend more than 30 seconds making a science diagram. Lines do not have to be made perfectly straight with a ruler. They don't need to spend more than 30 seconds illustrating a math problem. They can draw quick circles to represent objects instead of drawing the actual objects, for example. These are all things we have to teach most kids explicitly. They don't know this unless we tell them that and we model that for them and we reassure them that it's okay to do. Have students who are artistic and really want to spend a lot of time coloring or decorating or color coding do those kinds of things at home on their own time. You can also give classwork for homework and vice versa. So traditionally, we teach material in class and then have students practice it or create related projects at home. You can flip that model by having students read the content or watch videos on it for homework. You'll have far more class time then for that guided practice and the projects that you don't have time for now. And the best part is that you will be there to help students when they get stuck. That's a luxury that they don't have when they do these things at home. Now, you don't have to follow a full flipped classroom model to use this strategy. Just think about the tasks that you're currently giving students to complete independently in class, and try giving one of them for homework instead. Then the next day, have students do the follow-up or practice activity in class with you under your guidance, or in class where they can work with peers and collaborate. Eventually, you may want to try creating a screencast or a video of you teaching a mini lesson. It doesn't have to be anything fancy, and you don't even have to show your face. If you're making the video, just focus the phone or the video camera on your hands and the paper or materials that you're demonstrating with. Students can watch the lesson for homework and then do the follow-up activity the next day in class. The great thing about this is that you can reuse the videos from year to year. They're also super helpful for kids who are absent and for helping parents understand the strategies that you want students to use. So think about how flipping your classroom a little bit can help you. Another way to create more class time is to have students give presentations in small groups instead of the whole class. Nothing drains away class time more than 24 or more student presentations. And what's the point when kids start to tune out and they stop learning after the first few, right? So try having students present to groups of 4 or 5 of their peers instead. They'll still get all the benefits of learning from their peers, but just in a much more condensed period of time. Have students write fewer complete essays and give them fewer problems to solve. If you never have enough time in class for students to practice writing under your guidance or to practice writing with a peer, consider having them write a shorter amount of text so you can assess just the aspect of their work that you're focusing on. For example, if you've modeled how to write a strong introductory paragraph, ask kids to just write the introduction rather than a complete essay. Similarly, if you're looking for strong word choice or voice in student writing, there's no need for kids to write 1,000 words. Make the assignment shorter so students can focus more on the skill rather than trying to quickly finish the entire essay before time is up. Similarly, it's tempting to assign students a full page of problems to solve or questions to answer. After all, everything's right there on the page already, right? Might as well just have them do the whole page. But chances are good that you can tell after 10 problems whether a student is getting it. So why use up more class time and wear students out by assigning the whole page? I used to allow students to stop after 10 problems and show them to me. If they got them all right, they'd be allowed to work on something else. This motivated them to pay attention to accuracy rather than just rush to complete the page. If they didn't get all 10 right, I'd address the misconception and then have them try 5 more. I've also allowed students to do just the even or odd numbers on a page, or to choose any 15 problems on a page that they like. This tiny little bit of control really has a surprising effect on student motivation, and it takes up less class time and creates less grading for you. You also want to avoid making students wait until everyone in class is done with a task. This is probably the number one waster of class time that I see as an instructional coach. A teacher may give a task that some students finish in 3 minutes, and most of the class can finish in about 5. But the teacher doesn't review it or move on to the next task until 8 or 9 minutes has passed, because she or he wants everyone to be done. But this means that the majority of the class now has several minutes with nothing to do, which results in off-task behavior, which distracts the kids who are supposed to still be working, which prolongs the amount of time it takes for those kids to finish. And now, a fifth of the class period is gone, and students have barely done any work. So instead, try using a timer and setting it for the amount of time that an average ability student can complete the task in. Challenge everyone to be done in that amount of time. Just knowing that there is a limit will cause kids to work with more focus, and you'd be surprised how much more they'll be able to get done. When the timer goes off, tell kids, it's okay if you're not done. We're just going to start reviewing the task, and you can listen in as we do that. They can fill in whatever information they didn't get as you review it. Or you can set the timer for as long as it will take for a slightly below grade level student to complete the task, and add an extension activity. So say if you finish before the timer goes off, explain your thinking and writing, or create your own problem at the bottom of the page. That way kids have a focused task, and you're not letting this task go on and on and on until everyone is done. You've got to use that timer and decide how long you're going to allot to the task. Another way around this is to make sure that you're not having the whole class do the same activity at the same time all day long. This will help you avoid having students wait around unnecessarily if students can still work at their own pace, because everyone is kind of doing their own thing and no one is waiting for them. Small groups, centers, workstations, all these kinds of rotations can help with that. So does project-based learning. A final tip is to use many of the same learning activities over and over. When you introduce a new activity to your class, it takes up more class time than when you do things in a familiar way, because you have to go over the expectations, teach them what to do, what not to do, all that sort of thing. They have to understand how it works. It's important to repeat the same activities enough times that students know what to do automatically, and you don't have to model and practice and reinforce your expectations so explicitly and at length every single time. If something is really engaging and enjoyable for the kids, they don't mind doing something similar again later. So when you introduce a new form of learning or a new activity to students, repeat it again the following day or later in the week, and then do it again the next week. Take a break for a week or so, and then do it again. At this point, it should be a regular part of students' repertoire, and very little class time, if any, should be spent on explaining what to do and getting kids started. You can gradually add in new activities so that you have a large amount in rotation and the kids don't get bored. But you really don't need to reinvent the wheel and spend hours looking for interesting ways to teach every lesson. Like other experienced teachers, I've taught the same concepts and skills to students so many times that I feel like I've developed a huge repertoire of activities that I can build into my instructional time. I have activities that provide more scaffolding if the kids didn't really seem to understand the lesson, and activities that will extend student learning if what I taught was too easy. I have activities that will take a long time if my lesson ends early, and activities that can be done quickly if my lesson takes too long. So I call this mental list of activities that I go to over and over again my box of tricks. And I've refined it with hundreds of students over the course of the last 15 years during my work in the classroom and now as an instructional coach. These are my go-to strategies that I use over and over. And I recently took the time to take this mental box of tricks and write everything down for other teachers. And I'm calling it the Teacher's Box of Tricks. It's a set of go-to active learning strategies that can be implemented and adapted with no prep. So there's 35 of them altogether. 10 of the ideas will help you take worksheets and turn them into engaging collaborative activities. So instead of killing students with another boring test prep activity, you can turn it into a collaborative, higher-level thinking activity right on the spot. Another 25 activities are worksheet free. They simply provide an easy way for kids to practice the skills you've just taught them. So you can ditch the worksheets and the traditional paper and pencil activities altogether. The ideas in the Teacher's Box of Tricks are adaptable for any subject area, any grade level 3rd and up. What you need is students who can read and write independently. If your students are not at that level yet, then you would need to modify the idea. So I recommend it for grades 3 and up. And they require no special materials. You only need basic classroom supplies like scratch paper and pencils. So these activities will allow you to make worksheets more meaningful or replace worksheets completely with active learning strategies. I've created this in a list format and also sized to fit 3x5 index card file boxes. So you can create a literal box of tricks if you want. And you can write your own ideas, your own go-to activities on index cards, and keep adding to your box of tricks over the years. So if you want to check this out and you want to learn how to get it, or if you want to see any of the articles or resources that I've linked to for this episode that will help you with cutting out teaching practices that waste time and carve out more time for instruction, just go to my blog post for this episode. It's at thecornerstoneforteachers.com/S3EP10 for Season 3, Episode 10. As always, I want to leave you with a motivational quote for the week ahead. I call it the takeaway truth. And the takeaway truth I want you to remember this week is this: the ability to simplify means to eliminate the unnecessary so that the necessary may speak. Stop wasting time on things that aren't serving you or your students well. Figure out what's unnecessary in your classroom so that you have time for what matters most and the necessary can speak. Thanks for listening. Have a fantastic week. You can do this, and remember, it's not going to be easy. It's going to be worth it. Truth for Teachers is a proud member of the Education Podcast Network. Podcasts for educators, podcasts by educators. For more great podcast recommendations, go to edupodcastnetwork.com. That's edupodcastnetwork.com.